Yes, Call of the Night is back with another masterclass of an OP. The same groovy music, wacky and lovable characters, gorgeous momentary fan service, a little bit of that nighttime indulgence vibe that I love so much, a bit more visual comedy than I actually expected, than I even remembered from Season 1 right out of the gate. And of course, the same peak, indulgently unrealistic, relaxing nightscape aesthetic that I love and remember so well from Season 1. But let's first just gush a little and acknowledge that this is indeed a contender for OP of the year already. Creepy Nuts does not miss with the opening songs, and the visuals are gorgeous, stylish, they're full of little short subliminal frames that obviously allude to flashback and story stuff to be revealed later, and Anko's lighter flames are just, I think I just found the rest of Fire Force Season 3's flame effects budgets, to be honest.
Oh my god!
And the fight between Nazuna and Anko, it's excellent. But I'm not here to deeply analyze the meaning of the OP or anything like that today. I just wanted to give it its flowers and simply say,
that's pretty good, right?
Also, hot damn was this little cut sexy. Between this and that new Chainsaw Man movie trailer,
I feel like I'm gonna bust.
As for the actual show, while we absolutely do see a handful of reused frames from Season 1 right out of the gate in Episode 1, I really don't mind because shots like this, the one of Nazuna's apartment for example, are frankly iconic for me. And I'm sure as usual, this will probably allow them to do more with the animation in other areas. For example, perhaps repurposing this in different ways, and just focusing more on other elements. I just hope that we get lots more of those gorgeous, unrealistically well-lit nightscape shots like we did in Season 1. And so far, the ones that are there are absolutely gorgeous. Other than that, I think we've already got plenty of proof that this season is going to include many of, if not all of the same cool little visual tropes that I loved from Season 1. Unrealistically well-lit nightscapes, landscapes entirely baked with stylish, moody color choices that, occasionally sort of fit the tone of the scene. The head tilts, the close-up shots to highlight important dialogue, abstract, stylized visual comedy, cutesy, abstract background visuals, whimsical light leaks and lens flares all over the screen all of the time, sweeping dynamic cuts of gorgeously drawn vampire ladies with weird parallax camera effects and stuff like that, and the glorious momentary fan service shots from all of our favorite vampire seductresses who are, I remind you, canonically actively trying to seduce the men around them, basically round the clock, making these wonderful, short but indulgent shots literally like lore relevant and relevant to the themes of the show and the characters.
To make humans fall in love with us for efficiently creating more offspring, we're adept at acting in ways that attract humans. That's how we've evolved.
Because when you see a cut like this, the lady in question is more than likely actively trying to capture attention, trying to flaunt what you're seeing in the camera lens in order to look attractive and increase their so-called
Popularity power.
They're intentionally commanding the attention of the men around them, including myself. You gotta love it. Speaking of those vampire seductresses, before we talk about our main characters and more relevant, important story stuff, obviously the vampire gang actually played a relatively big and active role in this episode in trying to progress Ko and Nazuna's relationship status, separating them to collect data on each end and encourage each relevant party as to what they might do to help move things along and to make it easier on each other to do so. The vampire gang plays an active wingman role here, sort of forcibly moving along the romance plot. Most of the gang drags Ko off to their usual hangout with the explicit intention, of course, of giving Ko advice and helping him figure out what to do next, while more implicitly just wanting to hear some more adolescent romance gossip while they get their drink on. Meanwhile, Hatsuka pulls Nazuna aside for a top-to-bottom makeover, some firmly tongue-in-cheek ironic advice about how to be more feminine for Ko, and of course, more getting their drink on. Now, a lot of people probably aren't crazy, at least I would think think so about the gossip talk and the juvenile delinquency of these gals, but I do think that they managed to keep it about as funny as it could be considering what it is. And once again, I really do like that their admittedly cheesy and arguably obnoxious girl talk, their interest in the MC, all of this is, much like the momentary fan service shots, actually kind of relevant to the function of vampires in universe. Even if it's probably going to be reframed eventually and turn out that it was like all actually just because they wanted to help Ko and Nazuna all along. Nonetheless, whether this winds up getting subverted with more sincere intentions later or not, I really like that all of these goofy quirks all work with the in-universe vampire culture and their obsession with popularity power, and their curiosity about why Ko's blood tastes so good and all that stuff. Even the silliest and most degenerate elements in this show are often actually kind of relevant to the lore and themes, and that's pretty cool. Anything else I want to note here with the supporting characters? Midori is cute as a button as always, 100% would fall for her feminine wiles, and since I know I'm not supposed to say it, in 2025, you gotta love a good short stack, and Midori is peak short stack waifu material.
You can't do that!
Of course, all of the girls in this show are great, all the bros are too. I can't wait to see Bro-Kun hang out with Ko again. I also can't wait to see what Anko has in store for us over the long term, and I can also only imagine how many of the anime MILF lovers were eating it up when they showed her with her feet propped up in the intro, smoking, all dramatic and stuff. Anyway, as for our main characters and more main story stuff, we're getting to know Ko's dysfunctions a bit better, and it seems that it's deeply true that he doesn't understand what it means to even like someone. He literally has no romantic experience whatsoever, adolescent or mature. He doesn't really even have a good grasp of what he wants from life. The only thing that our boy here, who's so intent on running away from his daytime life to the indulgence and the freedom of the night, really showcases in this episode, during his time with Nazuna at least, is that he is clearly somewhat cynical about people's vaguely defined passions, even though he doesn't really know what he wants. Just thought about that. And he's sheltered to the point of having knee-jerk reactions to things that he finds immoral or distasteful. Casual romance, for example. Even though it's obviously clear that he's changing in some ways, bit by bit, by the end of the episode. Nazuna, on the other hand, is generally presented as being more open-minded, at least on the surface, able to empathize with why people might pursue something without a solid idea of why they want it yet, and also able to empathize with how those engaging in casual romance or even pickup culture, for example, quote-unquote immoral activities, she's able to empathize with how these people might have ulterior, yet ironically more innocent intentions hidden behind the shallow masks that they wear. Maybe they just wanted someone to talk to, and this was the only way that they knew how. After all, she sort of sees herself in these people that Ko is currently judging. After all, she only got to know Ko and get this close to him initially because she tricked him into letting her get her drink on, so to speak. And this is all a really nice way of sort of mirroring the two personalities, how polar opposites Nazuna and Ko are in so many ways, and potentially why they might actually complement each other well and make up for each other's differences, each other's weaknesses. Much as I described Marin and Gojo in my last Dress Up Darling video. I love complementary personality traits in a rom-com, and seeing how those bounce off of each other and complement each other in interesting ways.
That's pretty good.
And yet, we also start to see how they're not so different in certain ways. Nazuna is making progress on this front, but is still struggling with her embarrassment around talk about romance and intimacy. This is funny because aside from just being a funny, ironic trope and running gag alongside her often vulgar and perverse sense of humor, that's pretty ironic, right?
Irony can be pretty ironic sometimes.
More sincerely ironic is as mature as she often seems to put herself off as in many ways. Even though we know that she's the older of the two, it seems very clear that she's actually also relatively inexperienced, which to me seems to lightly sort of imply that her becoming a vampire may have also been her running away in a sense, living a life frozen in a time of adolescent indulgence, in a stasis in a sense. Outside of her part-time job playing massage lady, she's easily embarrassed, often fairly guarded, sticks to herself most of the time, and is arguably sheltered by a life of playing video games in her apartment and indulgently wandering the night, either with Ko or just by herself. And all I'm saying is that I don't think that any of that is on accident. I do think it's going to be relevant in the long term, and once again, it all paints a much deeper than it initially seems set of characters. Polar opposites in many ways, and quite the same in many ways as well. Anyway, obviously the little title line of the episode is also important here. I mean, it is how the episode ends as well. It's very symbolic that they visited the zoo at night and quickly realized that it's not nearly as lively as they had imagined, given their impressions about what the experience would be like during the day. Only for him to end the episode cutting off his own request for them to visit during the daytime one day, as he realizes that Nazuna could never come here during the day. As he thinks to himself that time's not for us. He is coming to the realization that if the two of them are to fully commit to falling in love with each other and becoming denizens of the night together, although there are wondrous and unique experiences that only they will have, it also means that there are experiences that they'll be locked out from, that they'll have to give up on ever having. Forever.
Forever, forever, ever, forever, ever.
Anyway, I'm not just gonna ramble on endlessly, although perhaps I already have, but without getting into too many nitty-gritty details, theories, or scattered thoughts about why I just find Midori so unbelievably cute. Those were my basic thoughts on episode 1 of season 2, and I really enjoyed it. It was the kind of episode I walked away from thinking, yes, this is the show that I want to immediately sit down and gush about as a new season begins.
Not the way, my brother.
Hands down, when I felt that the new season of anime had truly begun, for me at least. A show that uses its presentation to take everything from the manga and take it to another level, without ever taking any of the appeal of the original away, in my opinion. This was the episode that made my July 4th and ushered in the weekend with hype for a new season and just great vibes as always. I'm immediately assured that while more romantic and story progression and tense and dramatic content is on its way, while I'm sure that conflict between Nazuna, for example, and Anko is coming at some point, there's also more of all the same stuff that I loved so much even from early on in season 1. Relaxing, indulgent, just the best vibes, period. And it just feels so good to have this show back, man. It feels great. But anyway, I know that many of you only jumped on the bandwagon about halfway at earliest through the first season, once the show had flashy fights and a smoking hot dominatrix MILF, at least in terms of anime age anyway. And I want you to know that I can forgive you for being a coward with no taste, but I will never respect you, because Call of the Night has been great since episode 1, my man. And I've got a much bigger, more scripted and researched video coming soon discussing the direction and the approach to its aesthetic, the way that its scenes are framed and lit, stuff like that. Because it's really interesting and unique, and I've thought about it a lot. I really just love the way that this show looks and was put together. The way that it looks reflects so much about the ideas that are also being presented by the underlying story. It's so cool how they presented these things. So just letting you know, if that's something you're interested in, a little video essay on Call of the Night's visual aesthetic and direction and how it relates to the actual underlying themes of the show, that's coming. It's scripted out and I'll be recording it soon, in quotation marks.
Please be excited.
That's the one, and that should be it.